Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. But especially welcome to Event Comics Month 5, Secret Crusade of the Dark Convergence. Yes, it's time to take our every other year look at event comics. The good, the bad, the ones that no one voted for because they're so forgettable. And indeed, as always, this is voted on by patrons, so if you have any complaints about the selections, well, I didn't make them. But I don't know why anyone would, because unlike last time, this is gonna be a fun one. Not that the events are necessarily good, but rather there's more fun stuff to talk about. Event Comics Month 4 produced some good episodes, in my opinion, but it was taxing on me. 3 awful events showcasing the worst that event comics had to offer, with one that was fine, but frustrating because of the start of a number of inexplicable, unnecessary retcons. While the show is about bad comics, the truth is that a lot of negativity, especially with stuff that screws over so many characters I like, is really exhausting and hard to get through. This year, however, featured a lot more spread out votes with interesting results, which of course I'll share with you now. Unlike in previous years, both Marvel and DC had clear first picks, though it was the Marvel event we're talking about next week that actually got the most. Dark Knight's Death Metal, which will be at the end of the month, was kind of a no-brainer. A lot wanted that one in last time, despite needing to talk about metal first. But the second picks for each company were swapping around a lot. Convergence won out, but for a while DC 1 Million was winning, and I suspect it'll be something people want to see at some point. Assuming they don't just vote for Infinite Frontier and Dark Crisis to close out the continuation from Death Metal. Still, older events were finally getting some love. Joker Last Laugh got a late start in votes, but ended up tying with Forever Evil. War of the Gods, Millennium, and Invasion all got decent numbers throughout the week of voting, and indeed, Dark Crisis, the most recent DC event I can talk about at the time of this video, steadily grew. Though as I said, if you want that, it might be good to talk about Infinite Frontier first. And then there were the Marvel picks, with the Contest of Champions event getting quite a few, which I suspect was mostly because people were like, fine, here's a good moment for you to end that storyline, Linkara. But while Avengers vs. X-Men and Secret Wars 2015 were hot contenders, what actually was constantly vying with today's event for the next spot was Siege, the 4-part storyline that put an end not only to the Dark Reign branding on Marvel books that began with Secret Invasion, but the ending of the Superhero Registration Act. It also would have only been 4 issues of Brian Michael Bendis writing, so this video would have probably only been like 10 minutes long, which is a nice break for these huge videos of Event Comics Month. But no, actually winning out was Secret Wars 2, a comic that many have not heard of because nobody talks about it. Well, okay, they talk about it for one reason, a scene that we're going to get into later in the review, but otherwise, yeah, Secret Wars 2 is an event that, despite being 9 issues long and was apparently the best-selling comic of 1985, has been mostly tossed aside, with people only recalling its much better first installment. And you'd think that it wouldn't be hard to do a sequel to Secret Wars. Basically do the same premise over again. The Beyonder, or some other figure, plucking heroes and villains off of Earth for some reason to make them fight each other. This time you can include characters you couldn't before, maybe add in some that you want to give a push to, set up some new dynamics for storytelling for when they get back from the new battle world. After all, that worked really well in the first one. The Secret Wars concept is so ingeniously simple, the equivalent of grabbing action figures out of a bin and smashing them together, having unique interactions that haven't happened yet. Hell, the entire thing started because of promoting toys. So naturally, the premise of Secret Wars 2 has no actual Secret Wars happening in it. The decisions behind Secret Wars 2 are baffling. Why was this the direction they decided to take it? Admittedly, the first Secret Wars is arguably the first event comic ever, so it's not like they had a blueprint for how to do this. Hell, Secret Wars 2 started a mere 3 months after the conclusion to the original. It's rushed out to capitalize on the success of the first, and was consequently the first Marvel event to follow the standard of how event comics would go from here on out. Main miniseries and tons of tie-in issues. DC was doing the same thing with Crisis on Infinite Earths at the same time. But we should probably get into what this actually is. Quick recap of the original Secret Wars. A powerful being nicknamed the Beyonder kidnaps a large group of heroes and villains, telling them to defeat their opponents and whatever they desire will be theirs, facilitating this fight on Battleworld, a composite planet made up of chunks of other worlds. Eventually, Dr. Doom steals the powers of the Beyonder, but they defeat him and almost everyone is sent home without the prize. Well, I suppose Spider-Man came home with a prize, but that was the Venom symbiote, so I don't know if that counts as him winning. So let's dig into Secret Wars 2 and see how you fail to follow up on a premise like that. We've got 9 issues to go through, and I'm reading from a trade, so let's just skip over it for the most part. If you want an overall feeling, the covers are a mixed bag. Some good, some, wow, you really phoned this one in, didn't you? We open in space, where we witness a cosmic plate spinning competition. Actually, these are galaxies seen from a distance. He enters our space at a random point, for time and distance have no meaning to him. Also because his GPS broke. At unimaginable velocity, he travels through the void, seeking one particular galaxy, and therein, a certain planet.
Food world! It's a world for you, but it's actually two.
We cut to a suburb of Denver, Colorado, where Molecule Man and his girlfriend, Volcana, live. They, of course, prominently began their relationship in the original Secret Wars. They spot a light over the hills, but disregard it so they can sit down and watch Hogan's Heroes. Seriously. But then when the TV goes on the fritz, they take a look outside to see chunks of that hill now flying through the air. Volcana uses her powers to blow up some of the boulders to prevent people from getting hurt, even though we see a car getting flung through the air from that maneuver. But she sets their apartment on fire in the process. Fortunately, Molecule Man has godlike powers, so he just puts it out. He deals with the chunks of Earth, saying that some sort of powerful energy is disrupting gravity. Figuring it must have been what they saw in the hills, he brings the hill to them, but the two are horrified by who it is. And so is Professor Xavier, who wakes up on Muir Island yelling the figure's name. The Beyonder. The Beyonder is here on Earth. He has arrived, and tickets have already begun to sell out, my X-Men! Xavier is recovering from then-recent events, but he tells Moira McTaggart to get the team there, the New Mutants, to Westchester to rendezvous with the X-Men. He also tries to use his telepathy to contact others to warn them of the Beyonder's arrival, but passes out while doing so. We cut to a 747 on its way to New York, where Captain America is flying coach, in full costume. Because. But what would Captain America be doing here? Couldn't afford business class, I guess. Who cares? What? Are you crazy? He's a living legend, man! My dad says he was really something back in World War II. He looks so young. I heard he was frozen in ice for years. Like Walt Disney is? This has truly captured the experience of being on an airplane without headphones. Also, and I have to keep asking this, Why is Captain America in full costume? Like, I don't question him being in Coach, but the fact that he's just wearing the full costume for no apparent reason? Is this a Marvel method issue? They drew the art with only a vague outline of the plot before they wrote the dialogue? In any case, Cap gets the telepathic message from Xavier and he quickly goes to the front of the plane. You want us to change course for Los Angeles? I'm sorry, but I assure you it's absolutely necessary. Is it? Because you know that New York and Los Angeles are on opposite sides of the country, right? Feels like you can still let this plane land in New York and then commandeer a plane there to get the rest of the way with less issue for the poor passengers here. And indeed, while Cap has a card that allows him to do this, the pilot is just happy to do it because Cap saved his platoon back during World War II. Though the pilot does ask him to go tell the passengers why he's doing this. Listen, I, a man frozen in the ice since World War II, have just now heard a voice in my head say we have to go to Los Angeles instead of New York so I can punch a godlike being. It's okay though, this is a Delta flight, so you're all getting extras of those great cookies they serve. Is this why they have him in costume, so he can easily convince people to do this? Because it's not like the sequence has to be this way. Why did he have to be in the middle of a commercial flight? Why not just be a Quinjet or something? Still, Cap reflects on the events of the original Secret Wars to give a recap to anyone not familiar with it. I should have known it wasn't over, but I hoped. I wanted to believe that our secret little war on Battleworld had satisfied whatever strange desire it was that drove the Beyonder to interfere with us. What does he want now? Well, none of you actually claimed the prize, so maybe he's just here to deliver it. We cut to the home of Molecule Man and Volcano, where, weird things are afoot. When I first read through this, I was very confused about what the hell was happening because, well, this ridiculous person was here. But this is, in fact, the Beyonder, who for some reason is dressed in an amalgamation of various costumes.
There. Sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
It really is a sad day when Combo Man looks more dignified than you do. Okay, that was unfair. They both look terrible. Also, he's destroyed their couch. Darkseid is looking at your comfy chair-sitting skills and shaking his head in disapproval, Beyonder. The Beyonder simply says that he desires to understand. So Molecule Man explains his own backstory and how he had a mental block that prevented him from using the full limits of his powers. But now he can turn little statues into apples and everything. But hey, he's just happy living in his apartment with Volcana and watching TV, occasionally doing their job. Honestly, he's kinda living the dream. Good on you, man. I guess that's what it's all about. Realizing that whether you're omnipotent or not, there's good inside of you. And that makes you okay. Serial killers? It's fine. They took care of a puppy once, therefore it's all good. But I guess everyone just has to find out for himself. Yes, sir. Experience is the best teacher. Experience! I desire experience! You should go to LA. You can experience everything there. Experience everything, like smog and corruption and the Lakers. And indeed, the Beyonder decides to head to LA. Oh, and you might want to take a less conspicuous form. I guess that one's a composite of the bodies you got to know on Battleworld, huh? It's a little strange. You're right, I'll pare this down. Composite of Galactus, She-Hulk, and Lockheed the Dragon it is. We cut over to the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, where Magneto is speaking to Colossus and Nightcrawler, explaining that he's here to help them because of the return of the Beyonder. It gets resolved after a mix-up with the rest of the X-Men crashing through a window to attack him. This is apparently the start of the time Magneto would properly reform, join, and then lead the X-Men, which unfortunately means he's wearing that god-awful costume with the big white M on it. I don't doubt that this outfit has fans, but me personally, it just looks goofy and unfinished, like a bad first draft for a Magneto superhero look. In any case, Magneto has been charged by Xavier to lead the X-Men against the Beyonder. Unfortunately, the Blackbird, or whatever jet they were using at this time, is out of action, so they do the next best thing. They take a limo that Magneto lifts with his powers.
My vehicle needs no gas.
You got a pilot's license, Maggie? Do not address me needlessly, Wolverine. This requires some concentration, even for the master of magnetism. Wolverine proceeds to ask, are we there yet, every 5 minutes. I love this shot of the car just hovering over traffic.
Let others waste their time in traffic jams.
Roads, X-Men. Where we are going, we do not need roads. Meanwhile, the Beyonder travels through California and eventually arrives at the office of some TV show writer who's ranting on the phone to his agent. Apparently, this captures his attention more than anything else. Yeah, well, maybe I am always angry, because I'm sick and tired of writing the pablum the networks buy. Tired of prostituting myself. Tired of car chases and phony drama. Did you know that on last night's A-Team, 5,000 shots were fired and no one got so much as a scratch? I wanted horrific tragedy and blood and gore in my light-hearted action-adventure show featuring Mr. T, damn it! I joke, but yeah, actually, that's exactly what he wants. Ranting and raving about network censors blocking off his attempts at showing the disgusting horrors of the world. I want to show him what it means when a 45 caliber slug rips through your guts. Show him up close the shredding flesh and squirting blood and... Of course I'm against violence, you idiot! That's the point!
Only a sucker like you would understand garbage.
Selling blatant gore to the mass media is the only way I'll call you back, Marty. This feels like a real conversation Jim Starlin had or overheard or some frustration he wanted to get out because it's too long and specific to suddenly be included here otherwise. The Beyonder arrives and takes on the shape of the Molecule Man, proclaiming that he desires to understand. The writer, who introduces himself as Stuart Cadwell, asks who he is. I am from beyond. In my realm, I am all. But here is multiplicity, here is diversity, here is incompleteness, which I do not understand. I desire to understand. Look, they left Sliders with a cliffhanger, hoping that fan demand would get them to greenlight another season, and it failed. There's nothing more to it. The Beyonder explains he desires experiences so he can gain understanding, and then for some reason transforms the guy's desk and word processor into a big pile of apples. I am from beyond, and I really like fruit. We cut over to a tie-in issue already in progress, where Magneto is dealing with some huge gladiatorial arena where mutants are being forced to fight each other. I am Magneto!
Master of Magnet.
After freeing the mutants, Magneto recruits Rachel Summers, aka the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey from an alternate timeline, to use her telepathic abilities to try to track the Beyonder. Back with the Beyonder and Mr. Gadwell, he sums up the issue with the Beyonder being that he could do anything he wants, but that he doesn't know what it is to want something. I sure know what I want! My desk back! This Honeycrisp apple used to be my favorite pen! He says he'll show the Beyonder some wish fulfillment and desire made manifest if he'll give the writer some power. The Beyonder agrees. Holy... my Shazam Award! It's transforming! I think you mean the Captain Marvel Award? Wait. Stuart gets transformed into this dude. Look at me! He made me into what I've always fantasized about! In retrospect, I should have fantasized about some underwear under this armor. He calls himself Thundersword and smashes through his own apartment wall like a jackass. Right now, I got things to do. There are a few things I'm gonna straighten out in this world. I'm bringing back Arby's potato cakes! What do you mean they're already back? He even summons a Pegasus named Boromir. Hoo boy, things do not bode well with anything named that. Keep Hawkeye away from this battle. Rachel soon senses the Beyonder's presence and the car lifts off in pursuit. Gotta imagine the people down there in LA traffic are not happy with this sight.
I was promised flying cars.
Since Stewart always fantasized about being a superhero, naturally his first order of business is attack NBC headquarters. Make me rewrite my scripts, will ya? Stewart would go on to write and produce Homeboys from Outer Space. The X-Men think he's the Beyonder and attack, Colossus needing to catch Cannonball as he crashes into this, Who knew brutalist architecture McDonald's was a thing in the mid-80s, too? Hey, go wreck a Burger King, will ya? I'm working my way through grad school here! Damn it all, why can't you all unite against the true enemy of humanity? Hardee's! Thundersword smashes up the place. Junk culture, junk food, it's all part of the same canker of mass media manipulated mediocrity that gnaws at the heart of this country.
Pull your finger out of your ass.
Rhodey, who was Iron Man at the time, suits up upon hearing of the battle happening in Los Angeles, and we soon see Cap arriving to help save some people. So, the famous Captain America has come to defend the corrupt institutions he represents. All hail the champion of lies, injustice, and the American decay! Dude, he punched Hitler. You punched a peacock. You are not better than him. Cap, being awesome, quickly figures out a battle strategy and just hopes the mutants pick up on his plan. First throwing a shield, but it's deflected. except the noise from the deflection is transformed by Dazzler into blinding light, distracting Stewart until Magneto can toss a dozen cars at him. Sadly, he recovers, and Rachel Summers soon realizes there's another powerful presence nearby, locating the Beyonder. For some reason not explained here, he finds Magic, Colossus's sister, and reaches into her being, transforming her into her demonic form called Dark Child. Magic transports a bunch of the X-Men and New Mutants away to go be in a tie-in, but Wolverine thinks the Beyonder just killed them and runs at him, slicing at him with his claws. There seems to be some kind of physical effect on the Beyonder, even though he shows no reaction. The remaining X-Men are teleported away as Iron Man enters the fray, the Beyonder realizing something. When this form was attacked, that was experience! This perceiving of others is not experience! Observing alone is not experience! And yet, much observing goes on here! As a YouTuber and a media critic, I feel called out by that statement. The heroes knock away Stewart's sword, transforming him back into his regular form. He begs the Beyonder for his power back. Long knives piercing this flesh is experience! Watching is not! But if I shall watch flesh pierced by long knives, henceforth I shall understand. I need to get stabbed and then watch other people get stabbed. Now this is educational. What's funny is that I feel like they could have made some kind of point with that, connecting it to Stewart's complaints about gore and excessive violence on TV, but nope. Captain America tries to approach the Beyonder, but he just teleports away as Stewart claims he went temporarily insane. Especially upon his realization he just destroyed the places where he worked. Cap plans to go contact Xavier about the missing X-Men and go on the hunt for the Beyonder, who is following him invisibly in preparation for a tie-in issue to bring us to issue 2. Now, this first issue was fine. A little weird, certainly, but you get the idea. The Beyonder coming to Earth to try to understand emotions and humanity and desire. Although it's weird that he'd be doing that, considering the thing he's most known for is telling a bunch of heroes and villains, anything you desire can be yours if you defeat your enemies. Anyway, moving on to issue 2. The Beyonder teleports to the top of one of the Twin Towers. It has been an eventful few days since his arrival on Earth, but not really in the miniseries itself so far. He's come to a few decisions, especially after apparently having spent time with Rachel Summers. He's going to try to create a more original human form for himself, one resembling Captain America because of how people react to him. The narration talks about how weird it is for him to be confined to the dimensions of space and time when all he knew previously was his own dimensional realm where he just encompassed everything. Also, he decided to give himself a big white jumpsuit because, I don't know, maybe Rachel told him that white was in this season in the tie-ins. He's committing to being in a physical form for now, feeling the sensations of cold and air on him. Wanting to experience more, he leaps off the tower to try to interact with more humans, before realizing, hey, wait a second, my body doesn't feel right doing this, and turns into energy before hitting the ground, then returning to a physical body a few feet above it. The instinct was well-founded. This small falling experience was a significant shock to his body. A greater fall would have destroyed it. Then he would have had to start all over. And it's already like 3 p.m., so the day's pretty much over. He starts walking around trying to figure out several things. He wanders, constantly encountering awesome mysteries, such as clothing. He knows what it is, and that it is generally worn, but not why. And he decided to have the Zentai suit on instead of just being naked because, the artist didn't feel like trying to cleverly hide his nudity. Actually, it says that he's going for minimalist attire, so he's not just copying other people without reason. Certain humans interest him more keenly than others. He has heard of the one called Paul Blart. He knows there is wisdom there. He suddenly feels hunger for the first time, recalling that Rachel had told him about this in the X-Men tie-in. Eat, she said, and you won't feel hunger. An instruction? Or a warning. Both if it's Taco Bell. He goes to a hot dog vendor and orders one and a cream soda, and smashes the bottle into his mouth. Meanwhile, in a completely unrelated storyline happening in the Fantastic Four for the tie-ins, thousands of New Yorkers are pissed off at superhumans, and Reed Richards is trying to figure out what's causing this. The impetus is actually the supervillain Hate Monger, who was working with another supervillain, Psycho Man, to brainwash people. And he does so here, shape-shifting into Reed Richards to get close to Sue Storm, touches her, and his powers transform her into the goofy dominatrix Barbie known as malice.
This clothing you gave me feels so right. It reveals the very essence of the hatred I feel inside.
Nothing quite represents hatred as much as a spiky gimp mask, a high collar, random holes in your outfit down the front, and a tattered cape. If I was ever to do a re-review of Marvel, that should be what I wear. Anyway, back to the actual plot of the damn event. The Beyonder comes across a clothing store whose windows get shattered by a brick. He asks the store clerk about the purpose of clothes and eating. The guy's just like, yeah, I can't help you. Go find a friend and ask them. And he's all like, okay, and teleports over to Peter Parker. Peter spots him and just thinks he's a weirdo who keeps setting off his spider sense. Why is clothing? What is its purpose? And then after he teleports up to another floor while Peter rides on an elevator, he continues. What is its significance? Why is eating? The great questions pondered by all philosophers. He follows Peter as he gets out and he changes into Spider-Man to avoid him. Whatever he was doing in that building becomes secondary as he decides to swing home, entering through the skylight. The Beyonder, having turned invisible, follows him. Nobody around to see me sneak through the skylight. Muppets, here I come. Dude, don't expect me to help you out of this one. You're on your own. Hey. Huh. Was I always like this? You're right, Peter. I should be watching The Muppet Show right now instead of reading this. In his apartment, he wonders if he was just hallucinating the guy asking him questions. Is hallucinating why there is eating? I mean, with mushrooms, yeah. Why is clothing? What is its significance? You changed clothing and other humans responded to you differently. And you thought about a difference that yet another change of clothing might make. Well, appearing to him like that does make him require a change of underpants, so... Spidey realizes he was reading his mind and punches him, but the Beyonder just asks about the significance of the experience of being punched. You gathered dozens of people together and tried to have them kill each other to win anything they wanted. How do you not know what a punch is? Both Secret Wars were written by Jim Shooter. You can't use the excuse of a different writer not understanding the character. Peter finally realizes that this is the Beyonder. The Beyonder explains his desire to understand this universe and way of existing. You know, I was a science major at ESU, and only a science major can explain the purpose of punching. Actually, quite the opposite. Peter says that he's a pretty smart guy, but the Beyonder is asking for complex answers to philosophical questions that he's not equipped to answer. Except, he's not. He's really not, even though people keep treating this as if it is. Why do you eat? Because our bodies are designed in a way to consume certain items for energy to sustain ourselves. Why wear clothes? For various reasons, including warmth and societal expectations when nudity is considered inappropriate and potentially sexual. And then explain further in follow-up questions. Philosophical questions are things like, why do bad things happen to good people? Or, how does one have a life of meaning in a world where it seems to be filled with so much meaninglessness? Or even, is the sum of a human an intangible essence, our thoughts, if they're real at all, or is a human merely a combination of chemicals and neurons formed in a certain way with no deeper meaning beyond that? That is philosophy, not, why eat hot dog? Peter recommends going to Reed Richards to get answers, since Reed is much smarter than him. The Beyonder agrees, but when Peter offers him some food or drink, the Beyonder asks if this will relieve this strange pressure, this fullness I feel in my lower abdomen. Peter realizes what he means. Sounds like you have to, go to the bathroom. Explain! And thus we have reached the main thing that people remember about Secret Wars 2. The one thing that has kept it in any cultural memory. Spider-Man teaches a godlike being how to pee! Even Peter realizes how insane this is. The Beyonder's in your bathroom, jerk! Of course there's a problem! What am I gonna do? I hardly believe this is happening! Oh god, I forgot to tell him to wash his hands after! The experience is consummated. So, here is the big problem with a good chunk of this event that I came to understand about it the more I read it. The baffling decision that apparently everyone was on board with. At least it's the best guess I have, because otherwise scenes like this are so stupefying that I cannot imagine any other reason for it happening. Secret Wars 2, at least for like the first few issues, is a comedy. It is not an attempt at serious examination of a godlike being taking human form. It is not a sober, tense battle to fight off a super powerful foe who can crush you with a thought. It is not even an action-adventure story with some jokey bits sprinkled throughout. It's just a broad, fish-out-of-water comedy about the Beyonder learning about human stuff and getting it humorously wrong. We're going from the original Secret Wars, which certainly wasn't devoid of comedy, but the seriousness of the situation took precedent, to this, a story where the Beyonder is like, but why Burger King? And then learns about the importance of toilets. To use an analogy here, it's like if you jumped from Star Trek II with its dramatic Shakespearean battle of wits between two foes, one on a revenge quest, to Star Trek V, where they try to smash together a plot about looking for God with Scotty bonking his head into a wall, and Uhura does a naked fan dance, and all the doors don't work. They think they're doing Star Trek IV, which managed to pull off this lighthearted concept of humor while there still is a serious situation, but instead they're a bunch of guys eating beans around a campfire trying to sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat while Spock contemplates the lyrics. Yeah, there are funny bits certainly, but it's trying to do all the comedy crap while more serious things are happening, and it just becomes a weird mess. And we're only on the second issue, people! Like, for the sake of brevity, I have skipped over plenty of comedic lines, but look how far into this video we already are. And yet so little has happened in it. The story will get more serious later, but so much of it is played for laughs, and it is baffling. And as such, we should get back into this. Spidey, realizing that he just pawned off the Beyonder to the Fantastic Four, swings off after the Beyonder teleports away to find Reed Richards. The Fantastic Four tie-in stuff has been happening, recapped in the narration, as the hate-monger and Malice have pushed people into a frenzy. And this serious, deadly situation is quickly interrupted by the Beyonder suddenly teleporting in and asking, "Is hallucinating why there is eating?" Maybe I should make some lunch soon, because it certainly feels like I'm having hallucinations while reading this. After a few panels, Reed learns that it's the Beyonder. The hate-monger's master escapes and he gets zapped into pink goo by some assailant, whom Reed tells She-Hulk to let escape because the smartest man on Earth is kind of an idiot. He finally addresses the Beyonder, who's confused by all this, and all Reed can say is that the universe is complicated and he can't fully explain everything to him. And the Beyonder teleports away and says he'll seek his answers elsewhere. Secret Wars 2 is the perfect encapsulation of the old remark that event comics interrupt the regular storylines going on in the main universe. Because that's all that's happened! The Beyonder just came by and interrupted their unrelated storyline and then went away. The Beyonder teleports in front of the clothing store again. "Asking questions of ones known to me has availed me no understanding." Well, maybe if you stayed around long enough to ask some follow-up questions, you might glean some info, dude! He teleports some clothes on a store mannequin to himself, but then a homeless woman berates him for taking clothes without paying, and doesn't find it odd that he can manipulate the clothes' size when she points out they don't fit him. She explains the concept of money to him, and he just follows her back to the cardboard box she's staying in, until the two are attacked by some muggers. They beat up the Beyonder because he doesn't have any money on him, and then leave. The Beyonder asks if the beatings are the common way first meetings happen, and the old woman confirms that. She suggests he get some protection, offering him a card for the Heroes for Hire. And he immediately heals up and teleports away to their offices. Luke Cage and Iron Fist aren't around, so the Beyonder looks into the past to a point where they were there, and then brings them to that point. So I guess in their tie-in, there are now just two of each of them running around? Luke attacks him over this, but after the previous encounters ended with him getting punched, the Beyonder punches him first. Luke grabs a hold of him, asking to step outside, and the Beyonder does so, running out a window to their confusion. Iron Fist talks with him, realizing that hitting him isn't going to accomplish anything. He explains who he is and what he did. Iron Fist thinks that the Beyonder should already understand these concepts, what with being one with the universe and all, but Luke interrupts to say that, yeah, life sucks if you don't have money, and it makes the world go round. The Beyonder thinks he understands, saying that the diversity of life creates a feeling of incompleteness that results in desire, and in turn desire can be sated with money, of which there is not enough of, especially when Luke explains the gold standard, of which Iron Fist points out was abandoned years ago. Spider-Man shows up, but too late to stop the Beyonder from transforming their entire building into gold. But not solid gold, as it collapses under its own weight. What'd you do that for? To pay for the services of Heroes for Hire. Somebody must pay. And then he leaves.
Wow, 2 issues in and so much has happened already. Like peeing and turning a building into gold. We're gonna get to a point soon, right?
Issue 3 begins with a cop accosting the Beyonder, who apparently fell asleep under a lamppost. Why do so many first encounters with others begin with an intense experience? Okay, while I find a lot of the Beyonder's dialogue repetitive and annoying, I do kind of appreciate that he keeps describing it as an intense experience and not as violence. Because if he truly doesn't understand other life, he wouldn't understand the concept of violence. Now if only he hadn't said, slay your enemies in the first Secret Wars, meaning he understood what violence was! This feels like some unrelated story that Jim Shooter had sitting around about a powerful entity learning about humanity, and he dusted it off because he had to rush out something for Secret Wars 2. But he was editor-in-chief of Marvel at the time. This was his choice to do it like this. Anyway, the overly aggressive cop gets shown the Beyonder's realm to demonstrate to him where he comes from, causing the guy to decide to get drunk. So to continue our comedy cavalcade, he encounters a prostitute who suggests they go off to a hotel, especially if he's as tired as he looks. He doesn't understand sex, but when she brings up cash, he creates a gold bar for her. She thinks it's some kind of trick and backs off. As in a lot of fish-out-of-water stories, the Beyonder interprets everything he hears as absolute truth with no room for slang or metaphor, so he proceeds to teleport to a nearby sleazy hotel to sleep. He goes to his room up the stairs, walking up the banister, and then collapses on the floor because he doesn't know what a bed is. He is awakened by a mobster named Vinny and his entourage, which includes the prostitute. Vinny explains how the prostitute, Toots, called her pimp and then the pimp called him, talking about the gold bar and all. He asks about the Beyonder, who gives a full recap of Secret Wars and the 2 previous issues, explaining that he only became aware of this universe relatively recently. For years, as you reckon time, I watched. I saw that there were many here and that they were incomplete. I had no knowledge of this incompleteness, this thing called desire. It puzzled me. I sought to study it. Unfortunately, I couldn't acquire the grant money I need, so looking for some outside funding if you're interested. I offered them a prize and set them upon each other to see what desire would cause them to do. They fought.
No, you explicitly told them to fight. How do you forget the premise of your best-selling story only a year later? With the completed recap, Vinny realizes that he can take advantage of the Beyonder for his own ends. What'd you say your name was? I am from beyond! How about I call you Frank? Is that okay? I am Frank Beyond! We're only 3 issues in and I am already sick of him saying, I am from beyond. It was cool and otherworldly and a poetic way of describing himself, but he said it so often here that it sounds like a fake telemarketer greeting now instead. Vinny has his goons guard the area so the Beyonder can rest, even letting Toots presumably teach him about sex. And from here on out, I can actually summarize the issue much better than the last 2. Vinny serves as a guide to mortal life to the Beyonder, him and Toots explaining how to eat properly, how to be in an orgy, how to buy huge, ill-fitting purple outfits.
Your costume is ridiculous.
I joke, but for whatever reason, the Beyonder actually listens to these criminals on how to do mortal things instead of just leaving immediately or asking the same questions over and over. Thus, he actually starts adapting to mortal life and understanding concepts within it. Vinny uses the Beyonder to make gold, not enough to flood the market, but keep him rich, as well as fending off some rival mobsters' goons. And it's not like he's tricking the Beyonder either. The Beyonder later admits that he knows he's engaging in crimes, he just doesn't care. Still, props for the comic not making Vinny a complete monster either. The Beyonder's powers also allow him to heal the sick, so the prostitutes in their employ are healed of any illness, and he even cures his son's dyslexia. He also doesn't let the Beyonder cheat at gambling, explaining the concept of sport and chance necessary to making them fun. Oh, and the Beyonder changes his hair to black and alters its style. And no, there's no explanation offered why he decides to do it, not even a token, I have decided to experience a perm. He becomes somewhat obsessed with gadgets, appliances, and technology in general, his limousine crammed with various devices that he plays with. So he became me when I got into 3D printing.
Vinny eventually tells the Beyonder that there's nothing left he can teach him, so he should strike out on his own, and he does so. He buys several homes, hangs out with tons of who I presume to be prostitutes, and eventually decides to make the Kingpin work for him. Yes, seriously, he just goes to the Kingpin and uses his powers to make him obey. You can't resist me, Kingpin! I'm all-powerful!
You are. I can feel it.
Look, I'll keep you on as my lieutenant, okay? But you'll take orders from me, and give me 90% of your take, okay?
I can't refuse.
Also, stop wearing so many Speedos when you plot to destroy Matt Murdock's life.
Okay, no one can control me that much.
And using his ability to control others, he immediately takes over the world because, well, why not? Vinny says he was meant for bigger things than just their criminal enterprises, and he decides, yeah, so I'll control everything. He controls people, molecules, atoms, nature, animals, etc. The only one who can resist his control is the Molecule Man, who frees Volcana from that control. And they just get back to watching TV, the hero we can all relate to. The Beyonder appears to thousands of people who all humble themselves before him. He switches outfits again, this time for this green monstrosity. And yeah, these big, weird 70s-esque outfits have pretty much become the defining iconic Beyonder look for some reason. Is it any wonder why when Spider-Man, the animated series, adapted Secret Wars, they had him look like this instead? Not perfect, obviously, but a marked improvement over Disco Superman. Oh, and here's the only other thing Secret Wars 2 is remembered for. Meeting an old friend of ours for the first time. I am called Circuit Breaker, sir. I worship you. I am yours.
Enough of that! I sense that you are an extraordinary human, driven by extraordinary desires.
Yes, Beyonder. There are few who share my obsession with duct tape fashion. She explains her backstory with being paralyzed during the Decepticon attack, only calling them robots, of course, and rants about how much she hates them. For like the first time in forever, the Beyonder stops smiling in this panel. Kinda neat how even he's off-put by this.
I see.
How else may I serve you, sir?
That will be all, thanks. Your cameo now guarantees that Marvel owns your character and other companies have to license you from us. Bye.
Yeah, in case you skipped the Marvel Transformers retrospective, that's where she's from. She's a Transformers character owned partially by Marvel, not her civilian identity, just her supervillain identity of Circuit Breaker because rights issues are bullcrap, thanks to her appearing here first. And they've done nothing with her since. I'd say that this was a big waste of time in a story already full of so much wasted time, but there is a bit of a point here. The Beyonder is still not content with controlling everything. He tries to ask people why he still wants things, but they can't answer that. He realizes that maybe he has made everyone just like the robots that Circuit Breaker hates. Programmed automatons, and when Toots is freed from mind control, she expresses how much she cares about the Beyonder. He was the only one who was ever nice to her, and it inspired her to give up prostitution and become a waitress instead. He gave her self-confidence instead of self-loathing. Good news, sex workers! Turns out you're actually all full of self-loathing, and you need a godlike being to give you some self-confidence, and then you won't want to anymore! It's just that easy! Yeah, hyperbolic exaggeration, but anyway, the Beyonder frees everything from his control, leaving only the faintest shadow of a memory that this ever happened in the minds of some people. He heads to Avengers Mansion and meets Jarvis, explaining who he is and how after what happened, he thinks that possessions and power don't bring fulfillment, but the gratitude of others does. Thus, he wants to help people by joining the Avengers. However, the Avengers are engaged in their tie-in issue in the Skrull Galaxy right now. So he teleports out to help them, and I guess it goes badly because he then immediately teleports back and says that it was a disaster and he has to change tactics again. It's a good thing that an important character development for the main character of this miniseries happened in some tie-in instead of the main miniseries itself. Wouldn't want to bog this exciting crossover event down with that. Otherwise, we might have to cut important stuff, like him wearing new horrible outfits. Remembering what Vinny said about gambling, he has a new idea, but says he needs a lawyer, electing to go see Matt Murdock in a tie-in issue. And we can ignore that right now and move on to issue 4, which is about the Beyonder trying to find love. At some point, he is hooked up with this lady, Sharon, who has somehow fallen deeply in love with him, but the Beyonder is just all, Well, that was fun having sex with you. Time to go off in my car that I can make fly.
I was promised flying cars.
Yeah, I know Avery Brooks' IBM commercial I used earlier already. We're not even at the halfway mark, and yet the comic feels like it's going through the same motions over and over. With the original Secret Wars, we had shifting allegiances, different threats the characters had to rally against, new stuff coming in to keep things interesting for 12 issues. Here, we're at 4 issues out of 9, and we still haven't figured out what the actual plot is. Is the plot to Secret Wars 2 really just the Beyonder meets with various characters and hijinks ensue?
What is the point of this thing?
Anyway, time for more wackiness! After he sets up a Thor tie-in, you know, some event comics really are a case of the main story happens in the tie-ins, but this really is a book that is all about the tie-ins. How many tie-ins can we set up to try to get more people to buy this crap? Some jets intercept his flying car and shoot it down. He then takes one of the jets instead, berating the guy who shot at him and has him bring the flying car down to a body shop. The only thing of note here is that right before this happens, we actually get reminded that there was a Rom Space Knight tie-in. We even see Rom's head floating in the sky. And that's only shocking to me because it's in the trade printed in 2011. I would have thought they'd have had to remove that for legal reasons. Anyway, he goes to visit the Molecule Man again, not just teleporting to him, because it's funnier if he lands a jet outside his apartment. He's here to ask him about love, and the Molecule Man does his best. It's not great, but he does hit the important points. That it has to be mutual, caring about someone else more than yourself, the more you give, the more you have, and that it's not a conditional thing. Consent is important, etc. The Beyonder says he gets it and teleports off, going back to Sharon. And I cannot believe that this is why there was a content warning at the beginning of this episode, who apparently killed herself in despair over the Beyonder leaving her. But no worries, people. The Beyonder is all-powerful, so he just makes her come back to life. He realizes that her love is transactional. It's more about how he makes her feel, and thus he's not interested in that. He puts forth a bunch of people he'd like to try to find real love with. Hey, some of them are men! Why not? I am innately of neither gender. I could just as easily take female form. So, does this count as non-binary or gender fluid? You make the call! And then buy the associated Robomat, because at the rate this episode is taking, it might be the only event comic we talk about for this month, and I'm gonna need the cash. Anyway, he says that he's used to his male form, so he's gonna stick with it. He finally settles on Allison Blair, aka the Mutant Dazzler. Appropriate choice, they both embraced 70s fashion for their first outfits. Admittedly, she had changed out her costume by this point for one much more boring, and she soon finds herself teleported to a weird bubble on an asteroid. Kinda like how the heroes and villains have been transported in Secret Wars. He gives her a brief recap of who he is, although she was with the X-Men in the first issue looking for him, and how he wants to understand love and has picked her. And again, he points out that she gets a say in this, so it's not like he's trying to force anything, even though, well, this is weird. She wants to go back to Earth, so he teleports her quickly every few panels to various romantic places on Earth in an attempt to woo her. She says she's a little frightened of his sheer omnipotence, and he points out that it's similar to how humans fear mutants, and she not be afraid. He says that he looked into her soul and found something more powerful than the universe itself. I looked into this. It's more that she has infinite potential, but claiming she's that powerful is a bit dubious. She's open to making out at least, and I guess slept with him. She wakes up at his place the next morning, and she admits she's still a bit overwhelmed by him, and he's just like, yeah, I may have come off a bit strong, so I'm gonna try to get you a gift, bye! He goes to Alpha Flight, fights them for tie-in purposes, and then gets a ring out of a bag owned by the hero shaman, even restoring his daughter in the process because of the whole, yeah, I need to pay for things bit. He returns to his house to find Dazzler leaving, since she just can't handle a guy like him. She has her own life and dreams, and the Beyonder decides to fulfill her dreams, putting her on stage at a concert, but of course she doesn't want it just handed to her like this. Beyonder seems like the kind of guy who would be really into AI art. Suddenly, the Avengers show up and attack him because he's too powerful and dangerous. Dazzler wondering why the hell they're doing this when he hasn't done anything. Seems like they've got him on the ropes, but Dazzler intervenes and he teleports them away. And she very quickly realizes, wait, why didn't you just do that from the start? Why were they being such assholes? He admits they were fake, but it proved she does care about him. Well, not after you just tried to gaslight her! She does not take that attitude, just reiterating that she can't be with someone like him, So he transforms her into a being like him. At first she's in awe of it all, but then suddenly pulls away and returns to normal. She doesn't want it, and when they embraced in that form, she knew that she can't love him. It isn't real. She then falls to the ground, dying when she hits. He's horrified at both her dying and how she doesn't love him, and in his rage actually destroys a galaxy far away from Earth. Dude, romantic rejection is always rough, but you just gotta get through it. Call up the Molecule Man and the two of you can go hang out at a bar and work it off. But, of course, as we saw already, death means nothing to him, so he immediately returns her to life. She's suddenly all over him, but he realizes that he's making her act that way, so frees her mind and makes her forget all this, making her think she just went on an adventure with him to end issue 4. Apparently it was after this point where the ROM tie-in happened, and frankly, it was a better philosophical examination of wants and desires and stuff than this miniseries itself has been. Hell, it simultaneously had a better look for the Beyonder, and one of his worst. Man, I need more clips to point out goofy outfits. I already used up my 2 standard ones. Issue 5 starts with the Beyonder feeling bummed about what happened with Dazzler, disassembling a train that almost hits him. There he meets Boom Boom, a mutant on her way to try to join the Xavier School. This is actually her first appearance, and she asks the Beyonder to come with her, thinking at first he's a mutant too. She explains about how her father abused her when he found out she was a mutant, and left home, and he gives her his backstory and all. Still, she's able to relate to him over his woes. The sense of rejection and how it can hurt you and make you think you're the one at fault, or you can wallow in it or get pissed about it, but in the end, you're just lonely. The Beyonder is beginning to think that this whole exercise is a waste of time. You ain't alone in that, dude. And he decides to return to his own realm. While at first he considers just returning to his natural state, he finds he misses all the stuff from Earth, even still thinking of Dazzler, but his thoughts are interrupted by an explosion in his pants. That's funny, a lot of guys get an explosion in their pants when they think of Dazzler. No, Boom Boom had a time bomb in his pocket. Not said outright why, but implied that it's because she felt mad about being left alone. Another rejection. Still, he teleports back to Earth and picks her up in a car, healing her injuries to show he's not mad about it, even though he seemed quite pissed about it at the time. And she thinks he's the type to not quit, so she knew he was coming back. Wait, why did you plant the exploding energy on him then if you thought he was coming back? They arrive at the X-Mansion. Boom Boom, or Tabitha as her real name is, goes up to the door to try to explain who she is, but then Rachel Summers runs out with the rest of the X-Men, pointing out the presence of the Beyonder and attacking him instantly, because everyone in the Marvel Universe is a trigger-happy idiot. Like, seriously, I think Reed Richards was the only one not to do that, and it's only because he was a little distracted at the time. Rachel commands the X-Men to go after him as he just drives off, leaving Tabitha alone on the doorstep. She's horrified by this, especially the Beyonder abandoning her. While the X-Men fail to catch the Beyonder, Tabitha goes into the woods and threatens to explode an energy bomb next to her if he doesn't show up. He fails to do so once or twice, but then on the third time and lets her come with him. He's decided that Earth is too small for him and takes the car out into space. They head to the World Complex headquarters of the Celestials, the powerful ancient aliens that try to shepherd the universe along. And they head to the boardwalk of the place. The Celestials don't do much, but they're impressive looking, so the spacefaring races in this quadrant have built a tourist trap around them. There's an entire water park built around one of them, the biggest pool slide ever. They buy some food from a vendor who knows who the Beyonder is. Apparently more sophisticated races know he's around. Boom Boom points out that they didn't seem to take notice of him, and he says she just can't perceive it on the same wavelengths he can. But he'll make a more dramatic demonstration. As such, he petulantly whines for them to pay attention to him, threatening to destroy the universe if they don't. When they finally attack, he blasts them all back, causing massive destruction and chaos on the boardwalk. Naturally, this horrifies Boom Boom, who demands she be returned to Earth and to stay away from her forever. He does so and grumbles, deciding to return to his mansion on Earth and wait to see the results of a tie-in issue. He accidentally listens to one of Dazzler's records, so he gets depressed all over again. Boom Boom, meanwhile, contacts the Avengers emergency hotline and informs them of the Beyonder and how he threatened to destroy the universe, saying she knows how to get him to show up. Of course, go to his house, hold a stereo over your head, and play nothing but Dazzler songs. She returns to the campsite she shared with him and calls out for him. He's happy to see her, proclaiming that her words really touched him before, and he knows now he has to move on with his life. And then he's immediately attacked by the Avengers, West Coast Avengers, and the Fantastic Four, just trying to knock him in before he can atomize them. However, Captain America finally stops them, pointing out he's not even trying to fight back, he's not opposing them at all. They point out that they can't really put him in prison. Were they gonna kill him then? Because this was during an era when the heroes weren't really willing to do that. What was the plan here? And Cap tells him he should just go home already. This event is so terrible that the heroes are just telling the main character to go away and leave them alone. The Beyonder says he already tried. He can't really go back. The implication being he's too changed by these experiences to be what he was before. He's wandering off. Shouldn't we stop him? No, let him go, and pray he eventually wanders home.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
5 goddamn issues you people have been trying to find the Beyonder! Everybody instantly attacking him, worried about what his phenomenal godlike power could do, which we indeed saw demonstrated with him taking over the world and threatening to blow up the universe so someone could pay attention to him! And you're just gonna let him go because he seems kind of bummed out? Sorry guys, we're ending the event. No one is really that interested in doing it, so we're calling the whole thing a wash. Here's a coupon for the next event. There are 4 issues left! Ugh. Last thing I'll say is that the Beyonder is clearly affected by Boom Boom's betrayal since he mutters something she had said earlier about being abandoned. I should also point out that he spent this entire damn issue stating and demonstrating that he was omniscient, so he should have already known about this betrayal happening before showing up. Whatever, next issue. The Beyonder purchases some land in Sparta, Illinois. No, I'm not that desperate for clips to use. Well, okay, I can still use this one for a lot of the humor in this book.
This isn't funny!
Anyway, he buys some land and constructs a massive building in it, filling it with conference rooms, living quarters, gardens, vehicles, etc. While he goes off to help the Power Pack, a journalist in town named Dave Shooter, who I should point out is never given a last name in the comic itself. I got that from a fan wiki, and I'm guessing he has that last name because, well, Jim Shooter wrote this. Goes to see the Beyonder and ask what the hell all this is. Using a machine to project his thoughts, the Beyonder gives a quick recap of what happened recently, including how in the Doctor Strange tie-in, the Sorcerer Supreme tried to steer him on a path of enlightenment, be a champion of life, and hopefully lead all beings of the universe into a higher state of being rather than collapse into eventual entropy and death. He also explained the larger cosmic forces out there in their personified forms. Order, chaos, eternity, and Mephisto, who is actually apparently a lover of the embodiment of death. Wow, and Thanos just let one of Death's old boyfriends hang out with them during the Infinity Gauntlet event? He explains that they are conceptual beings. Insubstantial as an idea, yet powerful beyond imagining. You know, like a fast food place that's actually healthy. It only conceptually exists. Our life form just can't conceive them normally. The representations that we see there are forms we can relate to, even though that's not what they actually are. Dave says he wants to abandon journalism and help the Beyonder, and he does so, basically managing the entire organization of what he wants to do. They receive communications of people in trouble or disasters incoming, and the Beyonder stops them, like stopping a tsunami in Australia, supplying food and medical technology to people in need, or even going into the galaxy to install stellar wind collectors for energy. The Beyonder admits he doesn't really need an organization, he can just do it, but he's happy for Dave, who's found his purpose in life doing all this, even though he's wondering if he should be doing something else. If it seems like I'm rushing through this a bit, that's because I am. We're on issue 6. You can see how long this episode is, and if I don't try to rush things along, this would end up being like 2 hours. One of the biggest issues with Secret Wars 2, what makes it such a slog, is its pacing. Believe it or not, we are actually going towards a conflict by the end of this. And I get it. It's a character arc for the Beyonder to get us to the ending, and all of this contributes to it. But there is so much side content, so many vignettes and non sequiturs that have nothing to do with anything or exist for jokey bits or to spin off into tie-ins. But on top of that, the actual plot points feels stretched out, taking the maximum amount of time to contribute the slightest bit towards the Beyonder's arc. Each issue follows the same overall idea. The Beyonder is confused about something and characters help him. He changes his attitude, next issue start over. Except then the tie-ins did their fair share of it as well, meaning the Beyonder probably learns the same lessons over and over. I'd hate to see a complete version of this event with all the tie-ins, because it's got to be repetitive and dull. This is a 9-issue event that really should have been no longer than 6. Some events like House of M are longer because they stretch out the existing story through decompressed storytelling, but this is a first for me. An event that is just overstuffed, not necessarily with padding, but rather in exploring its premise so thoroughly that you're kind of sick of it. After the Molecule Man worriedly learns of the Beyonder's plans, he realizes Uatu the Watcher is hanging out in their apartment, wanting to recruit him and confronting the Beyonder because of some of his plans. He doesn't want to get involved, so Uatu leaves. Back with the Beyonder, he's feeling uncertain of his place in the universe and still isn't feeling fulfilled by his purpose he gave himself. But he has to be confident as Captain America and Mr. Fantastic arrive to talk to him. For once, they are smart enough not to try to attack him, but rather express their worries. They're happy that he wants to do good, but they fear that humanity will grow to rely on him, become subservient just because of the risk of not doing anything to displease him. Which, yeah, legitimate concern, but seems like a bit of a stretch when the extent of his activities so far have been humanitarian efforts, stopping disasters, feeding the hungry, etc. No different than what they do, really. The Beyonder understands their concerns, but is really worried that if they're right, does that mean that there's no place for him in this universe, but reassures them that he'll take their words under advisement. After a major press conference to properly announce the Beyonder's intentions, the guy gets inspired by Dave's words. The Beyonder thinks that the reason why he can't connect with mortal life is because indeed he is bigger than everything within the multiverse. He is above it all. He doesn't want to rule it, but he does want to change its nature to something more positive. As such, as a champion of life, he has decided to end death. And word of this plan soon arrives to Mephisto.
So, it has come to this. That which I love most dearly is about to be destroyed forever. How can I steal people's marriages if people won't die?
The Beyonder introduces Dave to Death herself, of course loudly announcing that indeed he's gonna kill Death. And not only does Death not seem interested in, resisting this, but the Beyonder seems to have already considered that with Death gone, things will have to change. No more animal predation, even fungi will have to be altered, but he's ready to do the work. He's put a good chunk of his power into a goblet and hands it to Death to drink, which is the opportunity Mephisto has been waiting for, unleashing hordes of demons to attack the Beyonder, and he even threatens Dave's life if he doesn't bargain. However, even a fraction of his power is more than enough to stop Mephisto. Dave, having survived the torture Mephisto was inflicting on him, rants at the guy. You monster!
You ugly, red, source of all evil!
You don't want her eliminated, do you? That'd really fix you, wouldn't it?
You know not what you do, worm. Yes, without death as an instrument to bring anguish to worlds of men, without death to stoke my fires with souls, I am reduced to petty spite.
I mean, you'd still have the existing souls to torment, right? We haven't even discussed people who have already died. However, time for another intervention. This time, the various cosmic beings like the Watcher, the Living Tribunal, Eternity, etc. They all ask the Beyonder to not eliminate death, but Dave once again speaks up. These kind of conceptual beings don't know how sucky death is for mortals because they don't experience it the same way. He hands the cup over to Death, though the Beyonder admits that maybe they should slow down here because once this is done, he can't undo it. But it's done. Death drinks the potion that, well, I was going to say that unalives her as a joke, but I don't think alive quite applies to a being like her in the first place. Point is, she's gone. The cosmic beings already can feel the effect of it rippling throughout the multiverse. However, closer to home, the Molecule Man realizes what's happened and decides it's time to intervene, though in a much more subtle manner. He arrives and asks to talk with the Beyonder alone, pointing out that now he can't kill a flower in his hand anymore. And as such, why should he bother watering them? They can't die. In fact, why bother eating, if they even can eat? Why bother with anything?
It's over. There's nothing left to do. You, an outsider, brought us to our destiny.
and we're stuck with it. Okay, there is more to life than activities that involve killing things, you know. Or when you were watching reruns of F Troop earlier, did the TV station need to sacrifice someone to Cthulhu first? The Molecule Man leaves, and Dave realizes he's made a horrible mistake, demanding the Beyonder bring death back. Okay, but here's the thing. Even the Beyonder admitted that there would have to be adjustments and changes. I don't agree with just unilaterally removing death from the universe, but at the same time, I feel like the conversation was worth having and maybe even implementing. Because again, the Beyonder was preparing for existence as we know it to change. He wasn't going to just end death and then say, "It's your problem now, assholes!" Because theoretically, this could be a positive, especially with the Beyonder around to help oversee it. The status quo would change, and we would have to evolve socially, politically, ethically, and change is not inherently bad. It's worth discussing, maybe even having that be the plot for a few issues of this, examine a world without death and what that would mean for everything, because maybe we don't eat anymore, but maybe the Beyonder makes it so we don't have to eat, or we find sustenance in other ways. Sure, dying is gone, but would he also alter us so we couldn't get seriously injured? I can see him doing that. I don't see a government pulling a Torchwood Miracle Day and burning people alive when he could prevent it from occurring. I'm just saying, this is a big sort of plot point, worth exploring, and could be an interesting reason for people to oppose the Beyonder, and it's immediately undone. Yeah, the Beyonder says he can't undo it, he'd have to kill something, and he'd only do that if someone was willing to sacrifice themselves for it, though it'd mean they'd become the new death. Dave, saying he always wanted to be someone, volunteers, and the Beyonder kills him. He turns into the new death, something that is never acknowledged or spoken of again. Death is just the standard version we saw here and in the Infinity Gauntlet, so thanks for the sacrifice, Dave. And the Beyonder destroys the headquarters, figuring that maybe he can help in small ways instead of huge ways. Even though, you know, helping stop tidal waves and stuff was big, but incredibly helpful, even if it wasn't stop people from dying big. But whatever. Next issue! And boy howdy, this one's gonna be a short section. It feels like a tie-in issue that somehow made it into the main miniseries. The Beyonder heads to a Hawaiian island to be alone and just contemplate everything that's happened. His neighbor from another island thinks that's a great idea and invites people to do the same, and pretty soon he's grown into some kind of quasi-celebrity guru for people to contemplate, just sitting there and thinking, even though the Beyonder doesn't actually encourage any of them to do this. Meanwhile, Mephisto, worried that the Beyonder might change his mind and kill Death again. Yeah, even in the next issue, she's back to being the regular Death. Why did they even bring that up if they weren't gonna do anything with it? Decides to try to destroy him. He intercepted the power that was used to kill Death before it could return to the Beyonder's body, and traps it in a machine called the Beyonder's Bane. Patent pending. He knows that during the Secret Wars, Dr. Doom was able to steal his power and it made the Beyonder vulnerable, so he hopes to be able to do it again, recruiting supervillains to attack the Beyonder while he's on the island. The villains are all charged with a mystical sigil that, if any of them touch him, will unleash all the captured power in the Beyonder's Bane back into him at once, hoping that the sheer enormity of it in that moment will cause a feedback and destroy the Beyonder, along with a third of the universe. The insurance would cover it, but turns out that while they have an act of God clause, they don't have an act of Satan one. What's more, even the cosmic beings who confronted the Beyonder are contributing energy to make sure that it works. Eternity itself operating the machine, willing to blow up a part of itself. They're that afraid of the Beyonder. Hell, the X-Men are watching the Beyonder because of the Guru thing, and Rachel Summers wants them to go there, but Magneto is the one who says, "Cool your jets." He is doing literally nothing, Rachel. Ironic that stuff actually happens in this story when the Beyonder does nothing. So why did I say this felt like a tie-in issue? Well, because one more person is added to the mix. Ben Grimm, who apparently lost the ability to become human after he was left behind on Battleworld, got returned to Earth, found out his girlfriend started dating Johnny Storm, got depressed, became a wrestler against the Beyonder in another tie-in issue, which makes me think I know the real way to get rid of the Beyonder. Beyonder! This Sunday at WrestleMania, you and I will face off in the squared circle. You might come from beyond, but I come from parts unknown. And unknown is what people will think of you when I win that title belt, brother! Ah! Ooh. And he blames the Beyonder for all this, even thinking he truly wants to kill him. Mephisto manipulates him into going on the excursion, but when he gets there and the supervillains attack, Ben defends him, Mephisto having increased his strength 100-fold for the job, but meaning he can take on so many at once. Mephisto breaks the contract, denying himself of Ben Grimm's soul so the villains have a chance, but he distracts them long enough to prevent the villains from touching him, and the machine melts down, allowing the energy to seep back into him at a natural pace. The Beyonder finally realizes, hey, maybe my purpose is to help others find their true purposes, since that keeps happening when I interact with them. And then it happens in a tie-in, and he is upset by the results of it, rendering this end pointless if you were reading the miniseries on its own. Like, say, in a trade paperback like this one. We enter issue 8 with the Beyonder pissed. He's gone back to the Molecule Man and just announces how frustrated he is with everything. His power destroying planets and stars that the Molecule Man has to reassemble afterwards. Molecule Man calms him down, reminding Volcana that he's gone through therapy before and may be able to talk the Beyonder down. Volcana's love for him gives him the strength to move on. It's recap time yet again. Another thing that's making unnecessary padding for this. Look, I get the idea of having a recap for anyone joining in an ongoing series. It was policy for Marvel at the time. But this is a limited series with one issue left after this. You don't have to worry about catching people up at this point. Said recap also suggests that it was the Molecule Man gaining his own powers that accidentally opened the hole into the Beyonder's realm, starting this whole mess. But that's neither here nor there. The Beyonder has basically become a whiny, childish asshole at this point as he rants about his failures, saying that the advice he got was stupid, all his efforts wasted, and now he thinks there's no way to get fulfillment at all as long as anything exists besides him. He thinks nobody will truly be complete as long as others exist. They'll always be separate. Thus, he wants to destroy everything and be the only thing again. Molecule Man suggests he hasn't actually tried to be part of the multiverse. He's still been a god the whole time. Thus, he should become immortal. But the Beyonder just interprets this to mean that it'll make himself vulnerable. Maybe even to the Molecule Man himself. Huh! You're probably too much of a wimp to try, but you are afraid of me! Afraid I'll snuff out you and your little fool's paradise. That's what it is, too! You don't have fulfillment any more than I do. You've got a stupid game you play, you and that cow, with which you amuse yourselves. Okay, on which part of his journey did he learn to body shame and call people wimps? What the hell happened in the tie-ins between these issues? He says he's going to destroy all existence, but Molecule Man begs him to think it over, and he agrees to 24 hours to consider. The Beyonder gets a hotel room and uses his mind control on a waitress to spend time with him, and God, I hope it's only that. They don't say anything, but considering her clothes are open, it's possible it did, in which case, ew! He rants about everything, in particular wondering why life means anything to people, especially when he can't find any meaning for himself. She gives an answer about life being precious because it's short, but the Beyonder has heard it before and hates that they think that mortality has any value. While I don't like the changed style of the Beyonder's speech patterns to make him so immature, it does make a bit of sense that he is so due to finally allowing himself to be upset. When we're angry and frustrated, we can be irrational, and the same is true for him. The final two issues of Secret Wars 2 are a marked improvement because we finally get a real threat that requires the heroes to unite. This agonizingly slow journey the Beyonder has been on has finally reached a true change. A point to it all when, before now, he's just been all smiles and shrugs as he blunders his way through it. Sure, a few moments of annoyance or sadness, but this is him having gone through all this and finally arrived at a real tonal shift in both his character and the plot. The X-Men show up to attack him, but of course he saw them coming and is still all-powerful, so they accomplish nothing. Even Rachel Summers assuming the power of the Phoenix Force isn't enough. However, he realizes that he deliberately came to San Francisco knowing the city was under the X-Men's protection and forced this fight, to his surprise. He leaves and shatters a defensive dome the Molecule Man tries to erect to protect the city, instead arriving in a desert to talk to the Hulk. Apparently he had encountered Bruce Banner in a tie-in as he was contemplating suicide, and he wants to know about it, but apparently the Bruce Banner persona has separated from the Hulk, leaving only a vicious, savage Hulk, and the Beyonder does not like that unrestricted rage and monstrousness, seeing himself reflected in it. This is why it's so important to not give up on therapy so soon, Beyonder. As the Molecule Man despairs that he can't gather enough power to defend them, the Beyonder goes to speak with Peter Parker and... there's this bit. Beyonder! Long time no see. Come on in. Sorry, I can't let you use my bathroom this time. With this editor's note. Peter Parker's apartment was destroyed by fire in Web of Spider-Man number 11. Okay, I know they mean that happened separately, but it's implying that the Beyonder set his apartment on fire when he went to go pee. Pete's wisdom is to just reiterate the idea about mortality forcing us to find meaning and cling to life because we don't know when it'll end. The Beyonder remains frustrated by this answer, but consequently he's now considering not destroying everything. The Molecule Man wants to flee with Volcana, but she convinces him that they're just gonna have to fight him eventually. However, the Beyonder has gotten some time to think and decides maybe he should try to give mortality a go and apologize to the Molecule Man. But he is attacked immediately upon arriving. Volcana encouraging him to keep attacking, but it fails to stop him. I should thank you for showing your true colors right when I walked in. If you hadn't, I might have made a terrible mistake. And if I had, you would have shown me as much humanity as I'm about to show you. Dude, the last time you saw him, you insulted him repeatedly and said you were going to destroy everything. I think you can take the hit for that and try talking to him now. But it's Volcana who steps up. She knew that the Molecule Man might not be strong enough to stop the Beyonder, thus she runs up and begs for her own life, saying she only cares about herself and will do anything to please him. It's all an act to try to force the Molecule Man to despair and consequently be too pathetic for him to bother. He orders her to leave, and the Molecule Man indeed collapses in horror upon losing her. And while he's so pitiful that the Beyonder decides not to kill him, at least not yet, this whole display has convinced him to indeed destroy everything, so a bit of a whoopsie with this plan. Still, he wants to take one last look around and he teleports away. Volcana just sad that she had to do that to try to save her love's life. Epilogue. Later, high above the Rocky Mountains. With an editor's note, following New Mutants number 37 and Amazing Spider-Man number 274, both on sale soon. Oh my god! We're finally at the end of the goddamn event, and you're still shilling the tie-ins? Can we please let this story just be its own story now? The Beyonder prepares to destroy everything, suggesting he may need to erase the memory of it to make sure he never feels incomplete again. The Avengers arrive to try to reason with him, but that's for yet another tie-in issue. Let's finally reach the oversized conclusion. Somewhere in deep space, the one from beyond contemplates all existence. Maybe if I turned shrimp into pudding, I'd feel completeness. The Beyonder's having trouble with the fact that he needs to erase his own memory of existence, but in the meantime, Volcana contacts the Avengers hotline and warns the Fantastic Four, who are at the mansion, about the Beyonder's plan to destroy everything, explaining her relationship with the Molecule Man. Rachel Summers uses her powers, which have been expanded thanks to the Beyonder and a tie-in issue, to teleport all the heroes with ongoing series in the Marvel Universe to Colorado and go after the Beyonder. Volcana wants to stay and help, but Rachel says she's inexperienced with her abilities and she just needed info from her, teleporting her back to her home. She returns to her apartment to check in on the Molecule Man, even finding his teddy bear in rough shape. He must have been terribly distraught to do this. Owie, I'm so sorry. Yeah, dude, don't take it out on the bear! He's there to provide comfort, damn it! Who's the real monster here? Beyonder creates an underground lair for himself and decides to record all his thoughts on tape. A lot of it is recap of his emotional state and how he got to this point, but also the frustration of all living beings being driven by desire. Everything we do stems from desiring things. All other living things are content pursuing their desires, but he can't because of his omnipotence. Anything he desires just happens. He doesn't know what he desires, only that he does, and he needs to destroy existence so he can be everything again. But as long as his omnipotence knows other things can exist, he can make them be. And if he erases his own mind of the knowledge that they existed, he wonders if he'll still be himself. And thus he realizes that he has to take a final risk to try to understand us, potentially have a mortal death. And thus he must truly become immortal, be born again in a human body. I suppose I could get some human woman for the purpose, but that'd be complicated, messy, and it'd take too long. Oh, now the story is worried about things taking too long! And thus he creates a machine that will do the job for him. After testing it on the New Mutants, whom he apparently vaporized in a tie-in issue, he reconfigures it so that his mind and memories will remain, creates a receptacle to store his powers, and then gives it a whirl. And now, I am my own son! Now I can claim myself as a dependent on my taxes! I was gonna ask why this panel wasn't more infamous, but then I recall that when I told people about the irritation I had writing the script, that many people didn't get this far. Yeah, seriously, more than one person told me they gave up on Secret Wars 2 after only like 3 issues at most. Anyway, whatever he's feeling being mortal is too much for him, and he quickly goes to the receptacle holding his power and restores himself. Also, why is he a blonde when he's reborn? Did he actually have somebody just dye his hair black instead of making it black on his own? Back over to Volcana and Molecule Man, she finds him in his chair just waking up. He explains that he's actually feeling a lot better now. When she spouted her BS about not loving him and then fleeing, it forced him to look inside himself to see what it was that she saw in him to begin with. And it couldn't have been nothing. While he couldn't find out what it was exactly, he knew that he needed to find the strength within himself that they had when they were together. So, I know now that two people who aren't okay by themselves aren't any good together. Not really, not deep down. True relationship goals, ending your codependency. And indeed, he still loves her, it's just he doesn't need her anymore in order to find value in himself, and as such he's ready to help save existence with her. Back with the Beyonder, while the experience of being mortal was a shock for him, it was also exhilarating, and now being omnipotent again is dull and unbearable. As such, he has himself reborn once more. He tries it out, running around, getting out of breath, just enjoying being alive. And who should come in to spoil the mood but the devil himself? Mephisto is there, ready to torment him for threatening to destroy all of existence, including his. However, despite the horrific visions Mephisto inflicts on him, the Beyonder knows his power is only illusory. I know you have no power over humans, not on this dimensional plane. You're a liar! A deceiver! And if this had been back in hell, well, we know that the band Kiss can kick his ass. And wait, is this suggesting that the way to undo one more day is reveal that it's all been a massive illusion on the Marvel Universe because otherwise he has no real power over it? Anyway, the Beyonder reclaims his power despite the pain and Mephisto flees. The Beyonder realizes that he has so many enemies that fear him that if he becomes mortal again, there's nowhere he can hide. Thus he wonders if he has to destroy existence just so he can have some damn peace. As the heroes gather above the fortress of the Beyonder, the Molecule Man and Volcana teleport in to help. Hawkeye is an idiot. Another no-goodnik! Just what we need. Grab him, quick!
Have you learned nothing since this debacle started? Are you that much of an idiot, Hawkeye? I mean, the last episode showed you was pretty dumb, but I just kind of assumed that the problem was the writing in general in that book.
Anyway, the rest of the heroes are not as dumb and decide to hear him out while the Beyonder spots all this. He's got an idea for how to solve his problems and send his recreations of the New Mutants out to distract the heroes. They fight for a bit, one of the few real fights in this comic, and of course it's technically heroes fighting heroes, and eventually subdue them and storm their way down into the base. The Beyonder is able to subdue all the heroes, save for the Molecule Man. You sure you want it this way, Owie?
There is no other way. As long as you exist, everything I love is in danger.
If you'd just listen to me, maybe I could convince you otherwise.
I'm convinced that all you care about is you. You're a selfish god with no redeeming qualities.
Secret Wars 2, it turns out we're all the assholes. The Molecule Man can't hold him off forever, and the other heroes try to pour on, but it isn't enough. The Beyonder blasting them back hard and supposedly killing them. With them gone, the Beyonder puts himself into the machine to become mortal again. Molecule Man was able to save everyone in the path of the death beam and is hurt badly, the heroes quickly returning to the lab and examine the machine. There's a baby inside the gestation chamber of the machine, and the Molecule Man says they have to kill him while he's vulnerable. But most of the heroes are not on board with killing a baby.
I'll have no part of this, nor will I. I'm having a baby.
And it's a good thing my baby isn't going to be involved in a convoluted series of retcons and terrible storytelling leading to the destruction of the Avengers. Mr. Fantastic wants to examine the machine, even warning them that it's clear the Beyonder's power is stored within it, and consequently, if they damage it, it could unleash that energy and, well, end of the universe. However, the Molecule Man says this is their only chance, and destroys the machine. It explodes, all the energy pouring out and killing the baby, seemingly destroying everything, But then everything returns to normal, the Molecule Man having stopped it. Captain America thanks him for what he did, though he wishes there had been another way. The Beyonder is dead, and that's too bad. But all in all, it's a happier ending than you know. Is it though?
It's an ending, that's enough.
However, it turns out it's not quite the ending. The Molecule Man siphoned off the energy of the Beyonder from the machine and sent it back into the realm that he existed as before. It serves as a big bang, filling the void with space, stars, and eventually life. And so our comic ends with the narration speaking of this event. Thus, within the new universe begat by the Beyonder's power, mortal beings live their finite lives, giving meaning to the infinity in which they dwell. Thus, finally, is the desire of the one from beyond fulfilled. Also, it's still not over because there's yet one more tie-in to serve as an epilogue. You're welcome. This comic sucks! Still, let's get some positives out of the way first. The final 2 issues of the book really pick up. It actually finally feels like an event at that point, with stakes and drama and uncertainty about what direction it will go. I like that we had arcs for our 2 big godlike characters. The Beyonder's certainly taking a while, but there is an actual change. He grows to understand humanity and mortal life, and eventually even finally accepts their answer about mortality. And the Molecule Man gained self-confidence even without Volcana, but without losing her either. Despite what happened, they end things, including in the epilogue tie-in, together and happy and once again just gonna live their lives in peace. The Molecule Man may not have been born to be a hero, but he's certainly not a villain and can do the right thing. Also, despite issue 7 feeling like a tie-in that somehow got into the main book, I loved the overall plot of it, with the Thing needing to defend the Beyonder and consequently seeing Mephisto fail so horribly, because screw Mephisto. But that's pretty much where my praise ends. Secret Wars 2 is not an easy read, but not because it's uncomfortable or deals with complex issues that have no easy answers, rather because it's just so dull until the end. The pacing is its biggest issue, taking forever to get to its point and failing to do things to keep the reader interested in what transpired. Or if there are interesting things going on, then they're relegated to tie-ins. Even in-universe, this apparently takes place over a long period of time, weeks or months, and it feels like it. So many side stories happening, so many diversions from what can be generously called the plot. Efficient storytelling would have combined some of these things together so we weren't starting from scratch each issue. Like, the Beyonder meets and befriends an adult Boom Boom early on. She's there for multiple issues, he wants to explore love with her to cover that angle, and we've seen them together for a while, so we're more in suspense over whether they actually will get together or not, and her betrayal feels that much more heartbreaking. But consequently, the growing despair and anger of the Beyonder as the series goes on. You also don't have him take over everything in issue 3. You build to it, and that gives a reason why the heroes are so inclined to attack him on sight. Can we just talk about how bad the heroes are in this event? They are constantly so aggressive and trigger-happy over someone who's done nothing. Oh, but he's too powerful. Well, then what is punching him going to accomplish? And in some cases, they don't even know he's the Beyonder when they attack. What if it had been a normal person who snuck up on them to pull a prank? They could have killed people. If anything, they continually prove that they are irresponsible with their powers, because at least the Beyonder tries to improve himself and learn from his mistakes. And what's hilarious is that the repeated lesson of this story, one the heroes never friggin' get, is to not attack the Beyonder! Like, most of the problems in the story are caused by people attacking him instead of talking with him. And you can't even say, oh, it's because we need some action beats in the story, when the action contributes nothing, especially in a story where he's omnipotent and can just end the action right away. You know what this book reminds me of most of all? Marvel. It starts out as a comedy, then realizes it's not engaging its audience with its lame humor, and instead moves into pseudo-philosophy and putting its head up its own ass, made by a guy who couldn't be told no because he was the guy in charge. It is by no means as bad as Marvel, not by a long shot, but it is bad and the general plot feels reminiscent of it. So what did come from this event? Tons and tons of unnecessary retcons. First, the Beyonder was explained to not be what he was here, but a cosmic cube who gained sentience and was then rejoined as part of a bunch of other cosmic cubes, and it was a whole thing. But then they made another retcon later in the lead up to Secret Invasion that the Beyonder was actually one of the Inhumans who was also a mutant, and somehow this gave him godlike powers. I do not understand how this really reconciles with the events of either event previously, or why this is an improvement over what we saw here. Sure, I don't like Secret Wars 2, but his origin is simple and you could leave this alone. Why add a bunch of unnecessary baggage and connections to other aspects of the Marvel Universe that didn't need it? Oh, and sadly our lovebirds, Molecule Man and Volcana, would not stay together. Long story there, but they did end up separating eventually, and the Molecule Man would play a role in the 2015 Secret Wars, which I'm sure you guys will want me to cover eventually. And in fact, some people thought that's what I was going to be doing today. Remember when this episode started and I said this was going to be fun? Next time, Event Comics Month 5 continues with a much shorter, long-awaited sequel miniseries. It's time for Infinity Crusade. Mortal beings live their finite lives, giving meaning to the infinity in which they dwell. Thus finally is the one desire of the one from beyond fulfilled. And all living things in this universe will carry a single solitary race memory, peeing for the first time in some dude's apartment.
Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store envy link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Teespring. Thanks for watching.